Hi, welcome to our first coding session in which we will be reading EEG signals, and that's our multivariate data that we will be discussing in this coding session. And we will try to see how we can use lively vectors, and we will be using some very nice functions from field trip all the time, such that we see how we can use these functions in order to clean our EEG data. So in this coding session, I would like to start with some general tips that might be helpful to some people. And I would like to start with talking about Matlab and how I made it look like this and why I make it like this, because I felt like it was really nice to have the interface looking like that, and it was really helpful in the long term, and perhaps you might think the same thing. So I would like to discuss like different windows. So first of all, my current folder, you have the option to minimize it or restore it. So I felt like I'm not navigating this part a lot, so I have it always minimized. I and I can access it whenever I want. Also the workspace, I can still access the workspace and see my variables, and that's totally fine, but I have it minimized. What I'm trying to do here, I'm trying to really maximize, like really benefit from my whole like screen, and really focus on the code alone without having a lot of other windows that I don't need at the moment. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. And I'm also having this variable port here, so this section I find very handy, such that I can look at the code and see my variables like that. And the nice thing about Matlab, you can put it whatever you want to put it. I think by default it was looking like that, and I didn't like it this way because I would like to look at the code and look at my variables sometimes and in the same time. So I would like to have it here. I would like to have it here actually. And by the way, I would like to mention something which I find very interesting. That's something that I read in a book. It's called Pragmatic Thinking and Learning, and they were talking in this book about the fact that when you are switching the context like that, like switching your attention between different windows, it makes it really difficult to be switching your attention from one window to another, because you are losing some time and you are making effort, and you don't have like the two pieces of information at the same time. But I think doing it like that is much easier, and makes like debugging, as we will see, much easier. Okay, so that's about this window, and I would like to have my command window like that. As I said, you can put any window wherever you want to put it. If you would like to copy exactly what I'm doing, feel free to do so. I felt that this is like the best thing that was working for me actually. So okay, and I also recommend, and you can try it yourself and see if it's a good idea or not. I like the vertical tabs. I like the vertical, like fine names like that, because by doing so I can see a lot of file names at the same time. And if I put them like the default in the default position, I don't have this opportunity. So you can put them on top like that. I think this is the default. As you can see, I just have very few of them, and I would have to like navigate it like that. But when I put them to the right, like in the middle of the screen, I have the opportunity to look at a lot of files like so. So I really like the vertical tabs and this. You can also notice that I did the same for the Windows itself. And I think in general, it is not very easy in the beginning because we are used to like putting the start menu and stuff like that in the bottom, and putting things vertically is not very easy in the beginning, but I think it's nice in the long run, because when we think about it, our screen resolution, let's say it's 1920 by 1080, so we'll see that this is the 1920 and this is the 1080. So you can put a lot of stuff in this port. So you can put a lot of names or this window in this area like that, and put this vertical port like that, because you have 1920 pixels in this dimension. But in this dimension, like the rows, if we imagine that we have like 1080 rows, like here represented by each pixel, you don't have a lot of pixels. So I would really recommend not to put the start menu in the bottom, because you are taking out from what you have, like from the 1080 pixels, and you need a lot of lines in this window. It will be better to look at your code like at one go, instead of just keeping to scroll all the time. And I think this comes handy when we are talking about this, and of course you can try it yourself and see. Also, I would like to show you how I'm changing Matlab colors like so, because I also find it good to have it like that, like more of a dark mode to Matlab. So you can go to preferences, and here we can see a lot of things that we can do, and I will give you some tips, and of course you're free to apply whatever works for you. So one of them, when you go to editor debugger and then you go to display, is to enable data types in edit mode. I think this is very important, because what this does is basically, let's say that we are defining a variable, let's say x equals 1, and we are running this line right here, and what happens is when I hover on this variable x, it will just show the values of x, even if this is longer than this. Let's say that this is our variable looking like that. It will be very easy to just display our variable like that. So you can just look at the variable, and you don't even have to go to this window. So when you have a small variable, it's nice to get an idea on the values just by hovering like this, and you can see the values. I think this is very handy. And by the way, you might see that this looks different from maybe the version that you have, and this could be because I'm using this version, which looks a little bit different from older versions as well. Okay, so this is one tip about the values of the variables. Okay, so a second tip, which I think will come in very handy when we start debugging and running our codes, would be another shortcut. So if we go to keyboard and then shortcuts, we can see a lot of things that we can update here. So first of all, I think that one of the very nice shortcuts that we can have is running current section, or evaluating current section. So basically in Matlab, if you place two modulus signs like that, you are creating a new section, and basically I can just say that this part is doing something, and instead of just perhaps running this current line or evaluating this by saying that I'm gonna evaluate selection, we can press Control Enter, and this will evaluate this section. So you can separate your sections, which is like somehow parallel to Jupyter Notebook, where you have different cells and you are evaluating each cell. I think this is very handy, and we will use this a lot. So I think it's important to give a shortcut to this. And instead of pressing Control Enter, I'd like to encourage you to use F1, F2, F3, F4 because I think these keys are very easy to reach. So we can use F4 to evaluate current section. And I'm not eliminating Control Enter, I'm still using Control Enter as well. But I think F4 is really nice. And another shortcut I would like you to have, which is to step, and we will come to this when we do our debugging. So what this does is actually to proceed to the next line. So it will basically evaluate your current line and go to the next line. This will be very handy in the future. So that's F3, and F2 is very important. So instead of having to right click with the mouse, I need you to use your keyboard as much as you can, and this is why we are doing a lot of shortcuts like that. So if you press F2, you will be able to evaluate selection, so basically evaluate individual lines or perhaps evaluate like a huge block of code. So by pressing F2, and you can do another keyboard shortcut, which is F1. I have F1 to run or continue execution. So basically it will run the whole script from the beginning until we place or until the end, or until a breakpoint that we can place. And I will also talk about the break points. It's what appears here. We can just press like that and we will be able to stop our execution at this line. So right here I'm pressing F1, and what this happens, we enter the debug mode. Now we are debugging our code. We have stopped at this line, and we can see that we have these variables and everything is fine until here. And then we can press F3 to step after this line, F3 again, and we can like that debug our code and just like trace our code and see how the behavior of our code is changing with every execution of every line, which I think is very very important. So I can quit debugging by using F1 as well, but I will just use Shift F1, and here we go. We have stopped our debugging. You can do all of this with the mouse, and you can just go to editor and like step and do a lot of stuff, but I really don't like this. I don't like to switch the attention from the keyboard to the mouse, and when you start using your keyboard you will find it very 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 fast compared to the mouse. So I have this window minimized as well. You can bend this window. I think it's bent by default, but again this is taking some lines from my code and I don't like that, so I'd like it minimized to see my code better. So this is one tip, and let's go to another one, which is the Matlab colors that I have. So you can go to colors and feel free to pause the video and copy these colors to change the appearance of your windows, and all of these windows will change according to these colors. And of course you can also enter programming tools and you can change them if you would like to copy these colors. I find them very nice, and I find them easy on the eyes when you are working for extended periods of time.